Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Licensing Committee meeting. It's now 7 p.m. and I would like to start the meeting. I'm Councillor Karen Raper and I will chair for this evening's meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that the meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council website. There are no planned fire alarms this evening. In the case of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest available exit and congregate at the assembly point outside the college. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Have we some apologies or any additional apologies? I've got Councillor Fish and Councillor Benson. Yeah. Councillor Panjala, thank you. Yep, okay. Agenda item 2, the minutes from the meeting on the 11th of March. Now, I wasn't on the committee in March, so what I would ask is that those of you who were, perhaps comment or raise any questions you have about it. So, are there any comments or concerns? Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I just want to, I wasn't on the committee either last year, but on page 7 at the bottom of the minutes, there's a chair recommendation. I just wondered if we could have sort of an update on that, please, from someone that was either the meeting or from an officer that was there, because I don't know what happened with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to give an update on that. I mean, I think the recommendation was that myself, I think it was Councillor Green, who was the chair of the committee at the time, he'd expressed an interest to try and get a working party together or a working group to sort of review the decline of licences in Thurrock. We'd had a number of conversations backwards and forwards, and I spoke with a number of other officers within the council. There wasn't really much opportunity to sort of get a working party together. And certainly some of the changes that we're bringing forward in the taxi policy this evening around vehicle age and things like that, were quite supportive to try and support licensees in sort of staying, working within the borough really. A lot of the issue is really a national picture. It's cross-border hiring. I'm sure you've probably seen it in the news, over recent months. But that has had an impact on all licensing authorities. There are some big licensing authorities that are licensing thousands of vehicles all around the country. Wolverhampton is like the prime example of that. So until we get a legislation change, it's quite difficult to sort of do anything really locally. And there isn't really much budget to incentivise anything for anyone really. So.
Thank you. Can I just ask then, are the committee happy that we don't proceed with that? Yeah? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. So, the minutes are agreed. Yeah. Item 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declaration of interest to make? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is the taxi licensing policy. Can I ask Paul Adams to present this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this report brings back to the committee for approval the revised or the final revised Hackney Carriage private hire licensing policy. The revisions have been made in line with the most recent best practice guidance that's been issued by the Department for Transport. The policy had been out for consultation, and I've included the consultation responses in the report. The portal was actually visited by 498 visitors, and we actually got 31 responses, which for a taxi consultation is a relatively good response rate. I think, as you'll see from most of the comments, a lot of them are very supportive of some of the changes we're bringing in. And I think particularly around the introduction of electronic payments, and the removal of the age limit, the minimum age limit for taxis, and replacing that with an emission standard makes it definitely more affordable for licence holders to bring vehicles to be licensed, and allows them to keep them longer, providing that they're well maintained. Yeah, I mean, unless there's any particular questions, I don't think anything else I really need to say at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any members wish to comment or raise a question? Councillor Chukwa.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going through the report, and I did not see where DBS was mentioned as part of the requirements for this. Thank you.
Yeah, so the DBS, we haven't changed any of the requirements around the DBS. It is in our policy. I'm just trying to quickly flick to it. On page 39 of the report, effectively we require that everybody has an enhanced DBS check. Everybody must sign up to the update service, and we will check that at least every 3 months. In fact, we're actually checking everybody every month in relation to the update service. So, you know, again, we are fully aligned with the national standards on that.
Thank you. Have you got a follow-up question, or does that answer it?
Thank you. Thank you for that, because maybe I needed some glasses so I can see properly, but that's okay. And again, I saw where it was mentioned about the tinted windows for the vehicles, and it says that some of them can actually install CCTV. And is it not, I think it would be nice if every of the car licensing cars should have CCTV to deter crimes and all this stuff. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the moment our policy is that, you know, we would encourage people to have CCTV in their vehicles off their own back. If, as a local authority, we were to make it a mandatory condition so that every vehicle has to have CCTV, it creates a situation that actually the council then becomes the data controller of all the information that they're recorded, which means they have to have a relatively expensive CCTV system installed, and then we have to have control over all of that information that's stored. It's not something that we've sort of gone down the line of at the moment. I think it's a very good idea, but when you're talking about adding £1,500, £2,000 to the cost of somebody licensing a vehicle for the installation of that software, let alone all of the on-costs that are associated with us as a local authority having to be the data controller and managing all of those systems, we need to sort of get a balance with that. I think at the moment it's something that hasn't certainly, you know, sort of through like the, you know, things like the community safety partnership has been highlighted as something that is needed within the borough. We can certainly look at it, but again, I think, you know, it can be cost prohibitive in relation to that. A number of vehicles do have CCTV installed off their own back. It's their own systems, because it's not, you know, the requirements that we have. You know, these systems are much cheaper, a couple of £100, and they can put, you know, some sort of system in the car that would meet, you know, their needs, really.
Thank you. Councillor Gledhill.
Thank you, Chair. It's two statements more than questions. So page 116, I'm sure this is just a cut and paste error. Driving a Brentwood licensed vehicle whilst not in possession of a valid Brentwood driving licence.
Apologies, yeah, no, that is a cut and paste error. It should say Thurrock. As you know, I support Brentwood licensing as well, and they've got exactly the same policy, so I shall get that amended.
The last thing we want is obviously someone trying to use it as a technicality. And the other one was kind of a question, kind of a statement really. I noticed where the question, sorry, the statements have come back from residents and business operators in relation to the questionnaire, we've actually printed some of their names, or quite a few of them are fairly sort of obvious who they may well be. Do you think in the future perhaps just have respondee 1, respondee 2 and so on to further anonymise it rather than ending up with a complaint from someone that you put my name out there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we can redact the name. We only provided their username that they created when they submitted the thing. We didn't actually publish their name or any other details. As you say, there are some that you can tell who has probably made the comment in relation to that. I appreciate that. But yeah, we can redact that next time.
Thank you, because I think the criteria for that is if they can be identified in any way, we shouldn't be sharing it. So thank you, get that sorted. Anyone else? I have a question. We're allowing people or encouraging people to take electronic payments. Are we also insisting that cash must also be accepted all the time? Because I know in certain situations, if people are fleeing domestic violence or whatever, the use of a card can be quite detrimental to their safety.
I mean, we haven't included a condition that cash must also be accepted. It's something that if the committee felt that they wanted to introduce, we could add that as a condition to that.
And it does say in here about electronic things as well as cash, but it's not insisting on the cash. So would people be happy with perhaps tweaking that wording a little? Yeah, thank you. It's doable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can change the wording. I need to look through the policy to make sure I cover all of the areas, but to make sure that we say that,
because it
cash
comes
must
up
be
quite a few
available.
times, but
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Maney, I jumped in there ahead of you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few quick questions, if I may. On page 71, the policy suggests that people convicted of discrimination offences or related offences, an application for a licence wouldn't be entertained for a minimum of 7 years. But if you compare that to people who have a conviction for drugs offences or weapons offences, it's only 5 years. Is there not sort of an imbalance there? I would personally, I mean, I'm not obviously condoning people who have offences in relation to discrimination, but, you know, I find it a bit odd that they can't receive a licence for 7 years, but somebody who's got a conviction for carrying a weapon could after 5.
I mean, I agree with you. I think, you know, we've based all of our timeframes around the DFT guidance, and the Institute of Licensing also produce some separate guidance as well around that. So our timescales are in line with what their recommendations are. I mean, these timescales are minimum periods of time. They're a guide, you know, a committee can depart from them. So, yeah, I think, you know, we're aligned with the national guidance. But yeah, I do agree that there are differences. And I think, you know, some of these offences, it really depends on the severity of that offence as well. So, you know, it's always a starting point. It's where we look for, you know, 5 years, 7 years. You know, it's quite a period of time that we wouldn't consider you for a licence. But yeah, I think, you know, it was based on a national picture.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Kind
No.
of, yeah. You know, it's not something that I'll dwell on, but I thank you for answering it. If I can just ask a few other questions. Thank you, Chair. Just a bit of clarity, if I can. All through the policy, that there's reference to assistance dogs being carried in licensed vehicles. I've personally come across cases where people with assistance dogs have been refused service or entry to certain premises, and it's one of those things that really rankles me personally. I think if you have, personally speaking, if you have, if you have a religious restriction or religious grounds to be anti-dogs, if I could use that language. I think you're probably doing the wrong trade. But the way I've read that policy is if somebody does have a religious reason for not wanting an assistance dog to be carried in their vehicle, they can request that the animal is carried in the back, but they can't refuse if the passenger ultimately says they want the dog to be taken in the front of the vehicle. I mean, this may sound like a small point, but I've come across more than one case where somebody has been, with an assistance dog, has been discriminated against because the proprietor of a business has taken some umbrage to the presence of a dog for religious reasons in their premises. And I think someone's religious beliefs are of irrelevance when it comes to what the law clearly says. And I just want to be clear that that provision is, as I'm reading it, which is that ultimately somebody cannot refuse to take an assistance dog in the front of their vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I mean, the only exemption for carrying assistance dogs would be a medical exemption. And we've introduced a medical exemption part to the policy to make it very clear. I think we actually did have somebody that applied for the medical exemption that we brought to committee. That's the reason why we've formulated the policy to make it clear on how we'd approach it. But yeah, you're correct. The religious belief wouldn't be sufficient to refuse an assistance dog from a Hackney carriage or a private hire vehicle.
Sorry, did you say it would be an excuse?
No, it would not.
Thank you. And Chair, can I just ask some? I will roll through them just in relation to the points table. I think on balance this is a good thing. Again, I think some of the points don't sort of match up with the offence, if I can use that word. For example, collusion or interfering with evidence, victims or witnesses when officers of the council are carrying out an investigation. It's only 15 points. I would have thought that if somebody willfully obstructs an investigation, bearing in mind that the whole licensing regime focuses around public safety, if there's any evidence that somebody's, as I said, willfully frustrating that investigation, that should surely be an automatic ban rather than 15 points.
I think what we're very clear is that when you get to the 20-point limit, it doesn't automatically ban anyone or take any action. It means it's a referral to committee so that people can consider what is the appropriate course of action. The guidance, and there's some case law that actually states that you shouldn't have a policy that says when you get to 20 points it's a revocation or a suspension. You should consider what the appropriate action shall be. Yeah, I mean it's a scheme that we've looked at from another council outside of Essex actually that have operated this scheme for a number of years, and we looked at a number of schemes when we were bringing this in. I agree with you. I mean, I think you could look at everything in every circumstance. I think what I will say is that the chances of us issuing points in those areas, are quite slim. In my time here, I've probably on 2 or 3 occasions had calls where we may consider issuing points for that type of offence. The sort of the view is we'll let this bed in, we'll see how it goes, and we'll have a review on it because we want to make sure it's fit for purpose locally. If we feel there are things that are slipping through the net that perhaps shouldn't, we can then bring that back and have a look at that. It still doesn't preclude us from actually taking someone to committee if we still feel they're not fit and proper for any other purpose, and the policy is quite clear about that. This is sort of like a totting up. It's really aimed at the more of the minor offences where things like they're not wearing their driver's badge, they haven't got their door stickers on, that sort of thing. They've got a boot full of rubbish that they can't carry a wheelchair in, sort of thing. So I can agree with what you're saying. I think we'd like to try and roll it out, see how it goes, and if we feel that we're missing things aren't being dealt with as they should be, we can revise that.
Carry on.
One final question, Chair. Thank you. I think that probably is speaking personally, I think that is the problem when you take a cut and paste. It might be something that another licensing authority, has had within their policy for a long time. But I just think if we're doing this for the first time, we should look to get it right for the first time. But I do take on board what you say. It will be subject to review in coming years. One final question, and again, on page 120, permitting the vehicle to be used for any illegal or immoral purposes. What's an immoral purpose? The reason I ask that, Chair, is because it's a very subjective term, and what one person might consider immoral, another person might not, and there's not an automatic right of appeal against the determination of a licensing officer, is there? So, I mean, what is an immoral purpose?
I think it's probably those sort of areas where there's, it's the fine line to whether it is illegal or not. And I'm thinking around, sort of the movement of prostitutes potentially is something that I know has come to us, a number of years ago in relation to that. Whether it's unlawful to do that or immoral potentially, I think that's a type of sort of thing that we would consider in relation to that. I think the emphasis would be on the illegal side of it, and where it doesn't fit into the illegal category, it's whether it fits into an immoral category.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm opposed to the policy. I'm not. I just do want to place on record, though, that I think, bearing in mind the word immoral doesn't even really feature very much in the criminal law anymore. It's a very antiquated word, and as someone who's a libertarian, I really am uncomfortable with allowing an officer to determine whether something's immoral or not. It's either illegal or it's not, and I just want to place on record that I really do not like seeing the word immoral purposes in any policy, because I don't think it's up to any officer to determine what is immoral. It's either illegal or it's not. For example, I don't want to get into examples, but I don't think looking at legal pornography is immoral at all. But somebody else might take a very different view of that, and I just think allowing allowing officers to impose potentially moral judgment. And again, I've been on licensing for a very long time, and I have seen cases where people are before a licensing committee on grounds related to sort of moral issues. I just think that, for me, I really don't like seeing this. It's not illegal, so we'll have another clause there which allows an officer to decide whether something's moral or not.
Thank you. Can I just come in here, going back to the point system, just to clarify that I've understood properly. If we introduce the point system, it doesn't prevent us taking other action whatsoever. Is that right?
No, yeah, it doesn't. As I say, I mean, the intention really is to keep a record, a more formalised record of the misdemeanours that drivers, vehicle operators, proprietors, do commit from time to time. So actually, over a period of time, over a couple of years, we can, look, say, well, you've had 3 times we've caught you without your badge now. We'll bring you to the committee.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I'd understood. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Maney mentioned the discrepancy between the time it will take to acquire a licence if you're convicted of a weapons offence versus a discriminatory offence. You mentioned that it was something, we're just following government guidance. Can we change it, though? I mean, if we sit here and say, oh, that doesn't quite look right, and we wanted to change either of those 2 periods, are we able to do that?
Yeah, I think in short, yes, you can. I think what we wouldn't really look to do is to go below those periods, so to take those as minimum periods. But if you felt that the 5-year period was too short and you wanted to say 7 years, then you're perfectly within the gift of the authority to do that. I would certainly recommend against going the other way, so where it was 7 years to say, oh, we'll reduce that to sort of 5 years, because you're going across against national guidance. The risk you do by setting your stall much higher than other local authorities is that actually drivers then choose to get licensed by a different authority and potentially still work back here in Thurrock under the cross-border hiring arrangement. So, yeah, it's a fine line as to what you want to do with it. But I think, yeah, short answer is yes, you can change those timescales if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a bit odd if someone goes and acquires a licence in another borough because they think, oh, you know, this authority will relicense me if I carry around a gun or something and I get caught. As a bit of an odd, you know, I can see you want to come in there.
Thank you. I think perhaps if we're following national guidelines, it's slightly, I can understand the arguments, but whether it's serious enough, because I would imagine most neighbouring boroughs or whatever would be following the same guidance, but that's obviously up to the committee.
Did you want to come in there, Paul, before you looked like you wanted to?
I mean, all I was going to say is, you know, I'm aware of cases where we have refused a licence of a driver and they have gone to other local authorities and got licensed. You know, I'm not saying that is the case. And that is one of the reasons why the DFT brought in these national minimum standards to try and align everybody. So we saw less of that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably align those sort of offences, but it's not a hill I'm going to die on. When it comes to the vehicle emissions, there's a line in here that says any vehicle currently licensed with Thurrock on the 1st of December 2025 shall not need to comply with the above until the 1st of December 2027. But do we know, that's still not an awful lot of time, do we know roughly how many vehicles Thurrock currently licenses that would, I mean, would they have to be wholesale swapped out, or would the licence holder have to buy a new vehicle? And if that's the case, do we know how many we're looking at there?
Can you give us the page number, please?
57.
Thank you. Paul, do you wish to respond to that?
Yeah, I think we have looked at the number of vehicles that weren't compliant currently with that. And to be fair, there was only a handful of vehicles because of our age policy. The emission standards are all set around the age of the vehicle pretty much anyway, to a certain extent. Most of our vehicles on the fleet are compliant already. A lot of people changed their vehicles, you know, when the ULEZ came in, because they do a lot of work in and out of London. There was only a handful of vehicles that are not currently compliant, and as far as I'm aware, most of those, if not all of those, would require replacement by that period of time anyway. I think, you know, if there is one or two vehicles out there that you know, can't meet that, we can have some conversations with those drivers early on, and I think it would be reasonable to bring that back perhaps to a subcommittee to look at whether we want to extend that period of time based on their sort of individual circumstances around there. But I'm relatively confident that most of our vehicles will be able to meet that period that we've set.
Yeah, I think engaging with those that you know, are looking at having to change the vehicle, swap the vehicle, would be preferable.
And I don't think it's the intention of the policy that we're going to try and suddenly get everyone to replace all of their vehicles. You know, if someone has got a vehicle out there that we haven't picked up on that doesn't meet the exact criteria, you know, we will work with them to make sure they can either keep it for a little bit longer or, you know, sort of look at when they can replace the vehicle. But I'm relatively confident that most, if not all, of the vehicles can become compliant within that time frame.
And is having this emission standard in the policy, again, that's our prerogative. We don't have to have this in here.
No, we don't. I mean, you could have no vehicle sort of minimum standard, really. So at the moment, we've got an age limit, so they have to be at least 4 years of age when they're brought for licensing. Particularly the wheelchair accessible vehicles, that makes them very expensive. by removing that and replacing it with an emission standard, the trade are very supportive of that, because actually they can buy an older vehicle that isn't, less than 4 years of age, still meets the emission standards, but is more cost effective for them to buy. I say particularly with the wheelchair accessible vehicles, that's more noticeable.
Thank you.
Thank you. And does anyone else wish to speak? Daniel?
Thanks, Chair. On page 17, right, and the last paragraph, or the last point, you're talking about the medical frequency for the younger license holders is reduced. And what about the older young license holders? Can you clarify the disparity between the younger and the older? Thanks.
So is that page 17?
Yeah, the last point there.
Yeah, so again, what we're looking to do is to align ourselves fully with the DVLA Group 2 standard, the medical that all bus and HGV drivers have to undertake. The medical standard actually provides that anyone under the age of 45 has to have a medical when they first become licensed, but then they're not required to have another medical again until they're 45. They have to make a declaration on the renewal of their license to say that they haven't got any additional medical conditions, from previous times. But again, I said that's aligning ourselves with the full DVLA standard. We apply the Group 2 standard, but at the moment, we're making drivers have medicals every 3 years, and the DVLA standard is based around medical advice, medical opinion, and again, for us to sort of depart from that, we're doing it off of our own back effectively. We can if we wish to, but I think it's important that we try and align ourselves fully with the DVLA standard.
Oh, thank you for that. When you talk about 3 years, 3 years that's the standard you're talking about. Now, the younger license holders, how often do they have to do their medical checks to compare with the older young license holders?
So what we're proposing is that anyone up to the age of 45 has a medical when they first become licensed, and then when they get to the age of 45, it's every 5 years until the age of 65, and then it becomes an annual medical at the age of 65. The only exemption for that is anyone with a known medical condition such as diabetes, and they're required to have annual medicals. Even if they were 25, they would potentially still have to have an annual medical if they've got a condition that is requiring they have a medical more often.
Can you touch a little bit about the conditions that can disqualify people from driving, please? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I mean...
The medical conditions that can disqualify...
The list is endless to a certain extent. I mean, the medical looks at heart, mental health, physical health, eyesight. There's a vast array of conditions. I mean, the medical, as I say, is aimed at making sure that bus drivers and HGV drivers are actually fit, because if they have, a medical episode when they're driving, potentially, a vehicle those sort of size, can be a lot of issues associated with that. The government guidance is that we align ourselves with that. So it's a very comprehensive medical, and there are lots of conditions that would preclude somebody from being able to hold a licence in relation to that. The Group 2 is for the buses and the drivers. Group 1 is for every car user, every car driver. So everybody that has a driving licence that drives their own car has to meet the Group 1 standard. but the Group 2 standard is a higher standard.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to ask anything? Councillor?
With the Group 2, if somebody has got something like a heart condition or something like that, that they're undergoing treatment for, that has to be notified to the DVLA, who then set extra tests before they are given that licence back, if that helps.
Thank you. Sure. Okay, thank you, everyone. Shall we move on to the recommendations? Okay, recommendation 2.1 is to consider the consultation responses to the revised Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy. Yep, everybody? Thank you. And 2.2, agree that the Hackney carriage and private hire licensing policy as per Appendix 3 be adopted and will come into effect from the 1st of December 2025. Is that agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 6 is looking at the licensing fees and charges. Once again, can I ask Paul to present, please?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is the sort of standard report that we bring each year to set the fees and charges for the licences issued within our team. The report sets out the rationale from it. Effectively, we can't make a profit in relation to licences. We have to spend the money on the areas that we're charging for the licences. And conversely, if we do make a deficit, we have the ability to be able to recover that deficit in later years. So we have, for a number of years, kept a set of trading accounts just so that we can show what it costs us effectively to provide that area of licensing against what the income is against that licensing. I think in section 4.15 through to 4.2 3, we sort of break down exactly what we're doing in relation to each area. In the main, in the Hackney carriage and private hire licensing this year, we're not proposing to change the licence fee at this time, but in most of the other areas where we're able to change the licence fee, we're looking for a small, effectively the cost of living increase, because obviously the costs of the council are going up. It costs us more money to provide the service. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's probably all I need to say. I'm sure they're happy to answer questions in relation to that.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions they wish to ask? Councillor Gledhill?
Thank you, Chair. Paul, on page 183, apart from being exceptionally small,
Hence my magnifying glass.
I noticed that the Licensing Act one, so I assume pubs and so on, we've got it's a £45,000 deficit. And I know, obviously, from doing this before and rereading what we can and can't put up, is this something that's been noted right across the country and perhaps a drive to get government to increase those statutory amounts to cover the real cost of administration?
Yeah, no, I mean, the fees for licences under the Licensing Act 2003 came into effect in 2005 when the Act came into effect, and they haven't changed now for 20 years, so we're still charging the same fee as we were 20 years ago. It is a national picture. If you talk to licensing authorities, licensing officers across the country, everybody's saying, we need to see a change in that. There needs to be an increase because it's costing a lot more to provide that service now as it did back then. There's nothing that we've seen to indicate that it's likely to change. I mean, the government are currently consulting around some changes to the Licensing Act, but it doesn't include any proposal to change the fee, increase the fee. As part of the consultation response, we are responding as licensing authorities. We've had a discussion around Essex, and we are including the fact that the fees need to go up as part of that response. And I think the Institute of Licensing are pushing for that as well. So I think nationally that will be the picture that comes back to the government in that response.
Okay, thank you. It's I know this has been a problem. It's been brought up a number of times in the past when I've sat on this committee. Moving on to my second question. So for street trading, the report at page 159 says we've got 8 licences in issue. Yet we're spending nearly, what was that, that's £21,000 on staffing to administer 8 licences, which seems to be somewhat excessive. But moving on from that, where we're only putting up the licences by CPI, on 8 licences we raised £536, assuming it's the largest one that's there, and we've got a deficit of 5,000. So is there a reason why they've not been put up to match and break even?
I think there is a fine line between if you put them up too much, people will stop being licensed, they will stop trading, and then we'll have no or even less income, for that area. I mean, street trading is one area where we have seen a decline in the number of licences in recent times. And when you've got such a small amount, you only need 2 or 3 burger vans or kebab vans or ice cream vans to stop trading. And it does have an impact on the income for the team. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, we could put them up much more, but again, as I say, I mean, it would a disproportionate increase to try and recover some of that costs, would be difficult to maintain the number of licences that are out there, to be borne by the trade. And most of these are, small independent traders. They're not sort of bigger businesses.
So on the flip side of that, as we know, the way you balance a budget, you either reduce the cost or increase the charge. As I say, I get back to 21,000 for